Good morning. All right, so today we're going to be working on our 6.4b, which is dividing with scientific notation. Please make sure that you go ahead and put your name, number, date, and class period on the top of your note. Today is the 27th. So our lesson objective is that we'll be able to perform operations with numbers expressed in scientific notation. So if you remember from yesterday, we worked on multiplying with scientific notation. So today we're going to focus on our dividing with scientific notation. But before we can go forward, what I would like to do is make sure that we do a little bit of review, and that's when we're dividing with exponents. So if you remember, in order to divide two powers with the same base, we have to subtract the exponents. So you can see here that I have the same base of a, stays consistent all the way through my problem, and now I have to subtract my exponents. So a lot of times what I do is I look at this m and I think of my fraction bar. We know that it means division. I think of it almost as a subtraction sign. So m minus n, which is what we have right here. So we'll do a couple of review examples so that we know that we're comfortable and confident with doing dividing with powers. So my very first one that I see is 4 to the 5th divided by 4 to the 3rd. So I see that I have a base of 4, and then I need to look at my exponents and do 5 minus 3, which then gives me 2. I look at my next example. It's x to the 11th divided by x to the negative 4th. Well, I see that I have that same base of x, but then what I have is 11 minus a negative 4. So sometimes I like to write that out, 11 minus a negative 4, especially when I'm dealing with negative, because if you notice, this is where we have that double negative, and we have to change those into positive. So now this actually becomes x to the 15th. So don't forget, don't watch those negatives. All right, so now my third example is 6y to the 5th divided by negative 3y. So if you remember when I gave you that little catchphrase, numbers, numbers, letters, letters, focus on your numbers first and divide or multiply, whatever the operation is, do that first, and then focus on your variables and our rules of dividing with exponents. So first, I'm going to go ahead and look at my 6 divided by my negative 3. 6 divided by negative 3 gets me negative 2. Now I'm going to focus on my letters, my variables, and I have y to the 5th minus a y. Well, remember, it's sometimes helpful for us to write in that invisible 1 exponent so that I have it there. So I have my base of y, and it's my 5 minus 1, which then gives me 4. Be very careful. Do not accidentally subtract your coefficient. It is 6 divided by negative 3, not 6 minus a negative 3. All right, my last example, 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the 3rd. I have that same base of 10, and I'm going to subtract my exponents of 7 minus 3, which then gives me 4. All right, so now we're going to actually move on to actually dividing by, or dividing with my scientific notation. All right, so what you're going to notice is very similar to what we did yesterday, which was in our multiplying with our scientific notation. The very first thing that we have to focus on is we have to talk about dividing the two decimals. So you can see I have this decimal of 3.7 divided by 2.5. So that's literally what I'm going to do. 3.7 divided by 2.5. So go ahead and type that into your calculator. And when you do that, you get the answer of 1.48. Now my second step is to divide the two powers. Again, exact same steps that we had yesterday, except now we're doing them with division rather than multiplication. So I'm going to divide my two powers, which is 10 to the 5th, divided by 10 to the 3rd. So we know that we subtract our exponents, so I have 10 to the 2nd. So because my answer, my original problem, was written in scientific notation, the proper way to respond to that or to solve that is that make sure that it is also in scientific notation. So now my very last step is to write the answer in scientific notation. So I have my decimal, 1.48 times 10 to the 2nd. So the very last thing I have to look at is I have to look at down here. And yesterday I had you guys put extra stars by it because I felt it was so important. You have to make sure that your final answer is written correctly. And in order for it to be written correctly, only one digit can be before the decimal point, and it has to be between that 1 and 9. So if I go back and I look at my answer, I look at that very first digit, and I see that I have a single digit, and it is between that 1 and 9, so I know that my answer is written in correct scientific notation, so I know that I am done. All right, so let's go ahead and let's flip on to the back and let's work on some examples. All right, so my very first example says 9.246 times 10 to the 4th divided by 2.3 times 10 to the 3rd. So again, my very first step was to divide my decimal numbers. So go ahead in your calculator and type in 9.246 divided by 2.3. And you should have gotten 4.02. Now we need to go ahead and divide our powers, and I have 10 to the 4th divided by 10 to the 3rd, which then gives me 10 to the 1st. So before I can go on, I have to make sure that I look at that digit that is before my decimal point, and I need to make sure that it is a single digit and it's between 1 and 9. And I notice that it is. So I know that I am in proper scientific notation. This one right here, you might be asking yourself, do I need that? No, you really don't. So if you don't put in the 1 there, that's fine, but you still have to make sure that you do the multiplying by 10. That you must have. All right, let's go on to the second problem. 9.549 divided by 9.1. So go ahead and type that into your calculator. Whoa, that was a gigantic number. So you might be asking yourself, do you need all of those digits? Well, you do. The only time that you can get rid of any digits is there are zeros at the end. These are all significant digits, so I have to have that 1.049340659. And now I need to do my powers. So I have times 10 to the, well, 7 minus 4 is 3. So that is my rest of my scientific notation. I then need to check and see, hey, is that digit before my decimal points, is that a single digit? And is that between 1 and 9? I see that it is, so I know that I am done. All right, next two problems. All right, so go ahead and type into your calculator. My step one is to divide my decimal digits. Go ahead and divide 2.263 divided by 6.2. And you should have gotten the answer of 0.365. Now we have to focus on my powers. I have 10 to the negative third divided by 10 to the negative second. So that's going to be times 10, negative 3 minus a negative 2 gives me a negative 1 because that's going to turn into that whole positive. So I have to stop and look, and I have to check and see that digit in front of the decimal point, is it between that 1 and 9? And I see that it is not. So that means I have to move my decimal point in order to get to a digit that's between 1 and 9. So I can see, well, if I just move it over one more place, I can get it. So now I get to change my decimal answer to 3.65. But I know that I've got to do something with my exponent. Because if you remember, our exponents tell us where and in what direction and how many places is my decimal point going to move if I put my answer in standard notation. So this particular place says that I have to move my decimal point to the left one place. I'm going to move it to the left one. Well, now if you look, though, we said, hey, this isn't in scientific notation. We need to go back another step in order to get into scientific notation. So in order to get to where I would need to go, I would need to actually make 2 jumps to get it back into that standard notation. So in this particular case, a little bit different than what we did yesterday. Yesterday we were adding 1. This time we're actually subtracting 1. So negative 1 minus 1, because I've got to go back that additional step, is going to give me a negative 2. So now my answer is in that proper scientific notation, so I know that I am done. All right, let's divide my decimal digits, my decimal numbers. So in your calculator, let's type 2.412 divided by 3.6. And I get the answer of 0.67. Now I need to divide my powers. I have 10 to the negative 30th divided by 10 to the negative 10th. So that becomes times 10, negative 30 minus a negative 10 makes that negative 20. I have to look at my first digit and check to see that that digit that's in front of the decimal point has to be between 1 and 9. I see that it is not, so that means I have to move it to the right in one place. So now it becomes 6.7 times 10 to the, well, remember, I would have gone to the left 20 places, but I said, hey, you got to take a step backwards. So in order to undo that, I need to go to the left 21 places. And now my answer is in scientific notation. So what I would like you to do with these next two problems is I want you to go ahead and complete these two problems on your own. So I'm going to have you pause the video, complete these two problems right here. Once you are done, hit play, and then that way you can check to see if you've got the correct answers based on what we've been doing so far. If you don't, then you know you can go back and kind of rewind this video a little bit and go back and kind of go through those steps again to make sure that you have them. So again, pause the video at this point, complete these two problems. Once you're done, replay the video to check your answer. All right, welcome back. So what we would have done is we would have divided my decimals, and when you typed that into the calculator, you would have gotten the answer of 0.34. Then, when you would have divided your powers, you would have had 10 to the 5th divided by 10 to the negative 3rd. Well, that becomes times 10 to the 8th, because 5 minus a negative 3 turns those into positives, and it becomes the 8th. You would have seen it's not in proper scientific notation. So I was going to need to move my decimal point one place to that right. So now it becomes 3.4 times 10 to the 7th. The reason why it is 10 to the 7th is because initially my problem was 10 to the 8th, which would have meant I would have gone 8 places to the right. Well, I'm getting a jump start. I got to take one jump already, which means then I would have 7 more jumps to go. So now my answer would be in proper scientific notation. All right, same thing for this one. We would have typed 8.952156 divided by 5.04 in my calculator, and you would have gotten the answer of 1.789. Then you would have gone and divided your powers, and you would have gotten 10 to the 17th, because again, 12 minus a negative 5 gives me 17. So I look at that first digit. I see that that digit right before my decimal point is between 1 and 9, so I know that my answer is in scientific notation. So at this point, what you're going to do is you are going to complete these last 2 problems on your own. You will then go up to the sub with your guided notes. Your sub will check both the front page and the back page, this page, to make sure that your guided notes are completely filled out, and they will check to see that you have gotten these 2 answers correctly. If you have the 2 answers correctly, they will give you their homework sheet, which is 6.4b. You will work on that, and you have an additional Buzz Math assignment to work on as well. That Buzz Math assignment is operations with scientific notation. In addition to multiplying and dividing, there is some adding and subtracting. However, there's enough steps that they walk you through that I think you'll be okay being able to figure it out. If you're struggling, Google it. Go to Khan Academy. They have wonderful videos that teach you on how to add and subtract scientific notation. I hope you guys had a great day. Make sure that if you're not understanding any of this, you go back and look through your video, and I will see you on Monday.